Hey everybody, welcome to Artist Soapbox. Artist Soapbox is a podcast featuring Triangle area artists talking about their work, their plans, their manifestos. I am your host, Tamara Kassane. This is an Artist Soapbox snackable, a bite-sized piece of a longer podcast episode. If you'd like to hear the entire conversation with Ian Finley about playwriting and revision, follow the link to episode 43 at artistsoapbox.org. And don't forget to subscribe. Let's talk a little bit about revision, because I know this is something else that is that you have strong opinions about.
Yes.
And I'm in agreement. But your assertion is that revision is 75% of the work in writing a new play.
Yeah. So I hate Lord Byron. I love his poetry. What I hate about him and all the romantics was this belief that they put forward that is still so prevalent, that art is just given to you. Like the muse reaches down and you've got this great idea and you're inspired and you go off and you write it and it's done. And it's a lie. It's a gigantic lie. And it's a destructive lie because it makes people feel that when they don't get inspired that way, that they can't write, that they can't create. And it's a lie because that's not how Byron wrote at all. Byron wrote and then he revised. He put the work in. Again, it's a craft, not an art. The art comes out of the craft, right? The working of the pieces. I remember my brother's a brilliant musician and songwriter. And in high school, he would give me his lyrics to take a look at. And I would then give him, notes and thoughts back, and he would get furiously angry. And once he cried out to me, red-faced in anger, "Why can't you just once say it's perfect?" Because and I think honestly, that's what so many people, when they give their scripts out for notes, that's what they really want. Why can't you just once say it's perfect? Because they believe that Byronic, romantic idea of inspiration, and it's a lie. The first draft really ought to be quite horrible. And I tell that to people.
And often is.
And should be, right? Because if it's not, you're not trying anything. You're not experimenting. You're doing the safe, easy thing. If it's any good in that first draft. Greatness is next door to awful. It's like 10 miles away from good, right? If you're ever going to be really great, you've got to allow it to be just miserable in that first draft. And then you can fix it later on. Anything can be fixed once it's done. And it's an iterative process, right? You learn about the work by writing it. You don't learn about it by researching. You don't learn about it by outlining. Those are important things. And you do need to do some degree of them. But you learn about the characters. You get to know the characters. You get to know the world by spending time in that world, which means piling up pages and writing. And then once you've written it, you realize that 80% of it is crap and has to be thrown away. But it's not wasted time. The 80% is not wasted. It's how you got to know what you are actually writing. So the first draft is really your real outline, right? The second draft is like your deeper outline. And then maybe by the third draft, you get something that's sort of your first draft, right? The process of revision, I would say, is 75% of the work. That first draft, maybe 25% outlining, all that 25%, and then revision is 75% of that, because anything can be fixed if you're willing to do that. And it's so hard because that is not what we're taught in schools. Having taught English before, I know this. The curriculum is so big, the Common Core, the standard course of study. There's just so much we have to teach, and I understand that. It means that there's not enough time for that deep revision. Now, I've got some great teachers at my school who really push revision, and they have had to structure their whole courses in order to make that happen, because usually it's, you draft and maybe there's a week for revision. And so in those cases, revision isn't revision, it's editing, which is a tiny little sliver under the whole revision umbrella. So we're trained to think that first draft has got to be pretty close to the final draft, and it's not true at all. It's a terrible misunderstanding that takes years of, even in college, unless you've got a good professor, you may be your first draft, maybe second draft, and then third draft is turned in. Whereas with playwriting, I find that maybe by my 5th draft, I can show it to other human beings. By my 10th draft, it might be ready for an audience of some type. And by maybe draft 15 or so, and we're talking like full drafts where I've revised every page in there, maybe it's ready for production at that point in time. And that's, that's me. It's different for every person. But I think just understanding that there is that much revision, it is a real revelation. But what it means, I know this is something we're going to talk about, but I get excited, so I'm talking about it now.
Jump into it. Go.
It means there's no such thing as writer's block, because it means that first draft that people get blocked on is to be awful. It's so awful, to embrace the awful, because it means embracing the good, right? People get writer's block for a couple of reasons. One of them is they don't know where the play is going. If you've got an outline, that is to say, if you know dramatic structure, you know your stasis, what's my inciting incident, what's my rising action. If you have a single sentence for each of those 6 parts, then you always know what's coming next. You may not know it very well, but you'll never know it very well until you write it. And then you write it and it's crap, but you know what's coming next. The other bigger reason for writer's block, which is really fear, right? That you're going to write something that's crap, that people won't like you, or they'll think you're a bad writer, or you're a good writer and you've written a bad play. There's all these awful voices in our head. And that prevents us from writing out of fear. Because if you were told, I'm going to give you $1 million to copy down the yellow pages, right? Do people still know what the yellow pages are? Anyway, people could do that.
They can
right?
Google that.
They can Google it. Yeah, exactly. they could copy that down and give $1 million. It's great. If I said, I'll give you $1 million, give me 120 pages of just complete nonsense, just mash the keyboard, they'd have it the next day. If I said, I'll give you $1 million if you write me a play, people would freeze up, right? I've got to write $1 million worth play. Oh, it's got to be good. And they'd lock up. So there must be something between the nonsense and the play, right? And it's that fear it's not going to be good enough. If you allow that the first draft is supposed to be bad, it's not supposed to be good. You are not supposed to show your first draft to anyone. This is my problem with writers groups, right? Is that people think, oh, I've got to show this to those people, and they're real writers. They know what's good or not, and then they get nervous and they don't turn out any pages, right? What makes you a writer is turning out pages. It's not going to Starbucks. It's not having a beret. It's not wearing a turtleneck. It's just piling up pages. And if you pile up pages, you're a writer. And they don't have to be good pages. They just have to be there and you're a writer. Writers groups are wonderful when we get to that revision process, which is 75% of it. But during the original drafting of it, and maybe the second and the third drafts, lock yourself in a garret, that wonderful idea of a writer. It's a solitary pursuit at that point in time before it can become the wonderful collaborative pursuit it is later on. Because otherwise you're holding yourself to too high a standard of goodness and you're not embracing that bad first draft. And if you embrace the bad, then there's no writer's block. You can write, and even as you're writing, there are times I'm writing, it's like, this is crap. This is crap. I always write in Starbucks and people can hear me, I think, muttering to myself, this is awful. And I'll call my brother. It's like, this is the worst thing I've ever written. Is well, you said that last time. No, you don't understand, Ethan. They will take away my membership in the Dramatists Guild. You said that last time. Ethan, you don't get it. So even though I say all this, the fear of the bad is still there for me. It never goes away. You learn to push through it at some point in time. And if you do, you end up with a draft and it's awful. It's so bad. It's not, and I say that and people think, oh, it's maybe not that bad. No, it is. It's so bad. And then you revise it, right? And then you revise it and revise it and revise it. I think of it, I call it the unwashed baby draft, because when babies are born, they're the ugliest things in the world. And they're going to be adorable, right? Eventually they will even grow up to be, men and women of great stature. But first they're babies, and before they're babies, they're these awful, ugly little lizard things. And you don't show that to other people. You wash them off and you wrap them in a little blanket and put a little hat and booties on it. And once you've done that, then you show it to people and say, oh, it's so cute. And they know it's not what it's going to be, but it's still cute. But that's not the first draft. That's like 3 drafts later when it's got the hoodie on and the little boots and the blanket. The unwashed baby draft you don't show to people because it's disgusting to anything but its mother. And that's and if you embrace that, there's no reason to be scared. There's no reason to be hung up on that draft. So you can just turn out the pages. Artist Soapbox is a listener-supported podcast. Please support the podcast via our Patreon page, patreon.com/artistsoapbox. For more information, go to our website, Artist Soapbox,
We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as well. All of this information is in the show notes. Artist Soapbox music is composed by Bart Matthews. Thanks so much, and we're out.